Testing 1, 2, 3.
I told her to take it up with the.
Yeah.
That's right.
Does she know that next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Get used to it.
yeah, but 10 o'clock. I mean,
No,
We
no,
want
no.
to get a hotel.
Doing 9 next
We're
week.
not.
are we?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Except Wednesday.
But you can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Just tell her to call me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You'll step in.
Okay, which
Wednesday is 10 o'clock.
Wednesday is 10? Yeah, because we have the what do you call it? The
Friday's
AM.
my birthday, so.
It's automatically a day off per the governor.
according to the governor.
Yeah.
Right.
What am I doing here? It's possible we could finish by then.
You ready? Okay, so we're back on the record for case 9692. One preliminary matter before we get to the witnesses. We're meeting today at 9 o'clock. We're going to go to approximately 11 o'clock. And then next week, on Tuesday, but not Wednesday, Thursday, and potentially Friday, we will be starting at 9 o'clock. And to hopefully try to move through things. So with that, I will turn, actually, is there any other preliminary matters from any of the parties? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, I have a preliminary matter.
Sure. Okay.
And that is, I asked a question a couple days ago, Mr. Decker, regarding adjustments to the originally filed MYP, anything beyond the removal of the electrification plan. And I'd like to get verification on that at some point before we adjourn today, that
Okay.
the testimony was there was no other besides that, and I'd like to hear that said or verified.
Yeah, we can verify that before the end of the day.
Okay, so you'll make someone will make some statement regarding it before we leave today.
Yes.
Sounds good enough. Okay. Thank you. And so,
Good morning, Chair Hoover. Joel Michelle on behalf of the company. The company calls to the stand April M. O'Neill.
Yes.
Could you state your name for the record?
April M. O'Neill,
And at the time of the filing of your testimony, what was your position with the company?
Principal Rate Analyst.
Ms. O'Neill, do you have before you a document entitled The Direct Testimony of April M. O'Neill filed on February 17, 2023?
Yes.
And does that document consist of 23 pages and 8 exhibits?
Yes.
Chair Hoover, I'd like to have Ms. O'Neill direct testimony marked as Company Exhibit 23.
so marked.
Ms. O'Neill, do you also have before you a document that is entitled Rebuttal Testimony of April M. O'Neill filed on July 31st, 2023, consisting of 7 pages?
Yes.
Chair Hoover, I'd like to have Ms. O'Neill's rebuttal testimony marked as Company's Exhibit 24.
So marked.
Ms. O'Neill, did you prepare or have prepared under your direction your direct and rebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections to your direct testimony?
No.
Do you have any corrections to your rebuttal testimony?
No.
And if I were to ask you today the same questions that are contained within your direct and rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit into the record Company's Exhibits 23 and 24.
Seeing no objection, so admitted.
And with that, Ms. O'Neill is available for cross.
All right, so I'm actually going to read down the names. I know some folks aren't here today, but just if they don't respond, that's fine. So Walmart, which I don't think is here. Sierra Club. Amtrak. I'm sure they're here. Montgomery County. Not necessarily. Supplier Coalition. Nope. Prince George's County. IBEW.
Good morning. I just have one question.
No, that's fine.
Good morning, Ms. O'Neill.
Good morning.
My name is Nicholas Enoch. I'm the attorney for Local 410 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I only have one question. If you take a look at your exhibits 6 and 7 to your direct testimony,
Okay.
I was just wondering why Exhibit 7 doesn't have the same level of granularity as Exhibit 6.
So Exhibit 6 is related to our common and general plant. So at a FERC level,
the accounts are listed there, so we have more detail. Exhibit 7 is related to an expense account, which that is the title of the account. So again, we're doing the same analysis, but at a different level. And it's discussed in my testimony, the differences between the two.
Okay, thank you so much.
Department of Defense, who I think also said they wouldn't be here today. Office of People's Counsel.
No questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Staff.
Good morning, Chair Hoover. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Ms. O'Neill.
Good morning.
Catherine Moriarty on behalf of Staff Counsel. I just have a few questions. As a result of BG&E's itemized analysis of FERC Energy Regulatory Commission Uniform System Accounts, or FERC accounts 303, 389, 398, the costs are allocated to labor because the main cost drivers in those accounts are labor, correct?
That is correct.
However, FERC account 303 contains a significant amount of plant-related costs, approximately 44%, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So by applying Staff Witness Delgado's proposed blended plant labor allocator to FERC account 303, the electric cost of service study, or ECOS, would apportion costs based on 50% of the plant allocator and 50% of the labor allocator, as opposed to allocating the cost to only labor, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In this case, would you agree that BG&E's proposed blended plant and labor allocator uses a plant account balance of approximately $6,647 million and uses a labor account balance of approximately $130 million to develop the hybrid plant labor allocator?
I don't know the values off the top of my head.
Okay, if you'd like, do you have a witness Delgado Sir rebuttal? You could turn to page 3. He summarizes the account balances.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the company's proposed hybrid plant labor allocator is heavily weighted by the plant account balance, correct?
I wouldn't say heavily weighted. Again, we're using 50% to plant and 50% to labor, similar to his methodology.
But would you agree the difference between $6 billion and $130 million is a large difference?
It is, but again, you're looking, when you're doing the allocator, as to how to allocate across the classes. So the class balances are smaller.
But $6 billion is larger number than
Yes.
$130 million. Okay, thank you. And using a hybrid allocator, let's say weighted by plant, would be inconsistent with the company's itemized analysis, which indicates the main cost driver for FERC account 303 is labor, correct?
Yes, just based off of your statement, that's correct.
Okay, staff has no further questions.
Company have any redirect?
Just briefly, Ms. O'Neill, can you explain the difference between Mr. Delgado's methodology and what you're proposing?
Sure. So typically the way that the cost of service study allocators are developed is that you look at the underlying balances of the allocators to determine a ratio that is then applied to the balance to allocate across the rate schedules. Mr. Delgado is taking the ratios that are calculated and then applying a 50% factor versus looking at the underlying balances. So it's a slight different methodology, but it's not consistent with how the company typically allocates or calculates the allocators.
Now, you just mentioned that it's not typical, the typical methodology that the company uses. Does Mr. Delgado himself recommend this methodology for any other allocator?
No, just the new plant labor allocator.
And lastly, does Mr. Delgado's methodology result in any significant difference in terms of the calculations?
No, his relative rate of returns are pretty much the same as mine, so there's no significant or material difference.
No further questions.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Barve,
None, thank you.
Commissioner Richard,
Thank you.
Commissioner
None.
Suchman, Commissioner O'Donnell,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
and none for me. So thank you very much.
The company calls witness Lynn Fiery to the stand, and she's in the stand already, so she could get sworn in and we can go.
I do.
Good morning, Ms. Fiery.
Good morning.
Morning. Can you please state your full name for the record,
Lynn K. Fiery,
and who is your employer,
Baltimore Gas and Electric,
and your job title, please?
Manager of Rate Administration.
Thank you. Do you have with you today on the stand a document titled The Direct Testimony of Lynn K. Fiery, dated February 17th, 2023?
I do.
And does that document contain 69 pages and 8 exhibits?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark Ms. Fiery's direct testimony and its exhibits as BGE Exhibit number 25.
So marked.
Ms. Fiery, do you also have a document with you titled The Supplemental Direct Testimony of Lynn K. Fiery, consisting of 5 pages, dated April 14th, 2023, with 3 exhibits?
I do.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark Ms. Fiery's supplemental direct testimony and the exhibits attached to it as BGE Exhibit number 26.
So marked.
Thank you. Ms. Fiery, do you have a document with you titled The Rebuttal Testimony of Lynn K. Fiery, dated July 31st, 2023, consisting of 37 pages and 1 exhibit?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to mark Ms. Fiery's rebuttal testimony and the exhibit as BGE Exhibit number 27, please.
So marked.
Thank you. Finally, Ms. Fiery, do you have a document titled Surrebuttal Testimony of Lynn K. Fiery, dated August 25th, 2023, consisting of 5 pages?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark Ms. Fiery's surrebuttal testimony as BGE Exhibit number 28, please.
So marked.
Thank you. Ms. Fiery, was your direct testimony, supplemental direct, rebuttal, and surrebuttal testimony and all of the exhibits prepared by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes, they were.
Do you have any corrections to make to any of your testimony today?
I do have one correction.
Can you please explain the correction that you need to make?
Sure. My rebuttal testimony includes an exhibit that's currently labeled LKF 11, and it should be LKF 12. So if you turn to page 2 of my rebuttal testimony at line 17, LKF 11 should read LKF 12, and at page 20 of my rebuttal testimony, footnote 20, LKF 11 should be LKF 12.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further corrections that you need to make to your testimony?
No.
If I asked you the same questions today that were asked of you in your pre-filed testimony that we just went through, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask that BGE Exhibits 25, 26, 27, and 28 be admitted into the evidentiary record.
Seeing no objections, so admitted.
With that, Your Honor, Ms. Fiery is available for cross.
Walmart. Sierra Club. Amtrak. Montgomery County. Supplier Coalition. Prince George's County IBEW. Department of Defense. Maryland Energy Administration. OPC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a few questions for this witness. Good morning, Ms. Fiery. My name is Michael Sammartino, and I'm an Assistant People's Counsel with the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. So if you could please turn to your direct testimony at page 67, lines 17 through 19. There you state...
Wait. Actually, let's just make sure she got there, so.
Okay,
The
I'm
direct
there.
testimony, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that would be the direct testimony, page 67, lines 17 through 19. And here, you state the total 2026 bill impact for an average residential customer receiving both gas and electric service from BGE. And you state that this because of this impact, BGE's customer bills will have grown at a nominal 1.4% rate since 2008, significantly below the rate of inflation. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in Table 26, I believe that's on the same page, you indicate that rates will increase 6.8% in 2024, 4.5% in 2025, and 3.7% in 2026. So cumulatively, over the course of the MYP, this results in around about a 15% increase over those 3 years. Is that correct?
I would say that customers would experience, on average, an increase of about 5% over the MYP period when looking year over year.
Could you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
So each year in January, customer rates would increase under this proposed plan. And on average, that increase would be about 5% for a customer in each year of the MYP.
So what would be the cumulative impact, say, from 2024 to 2026? If you add up each of those 5% increases, does that not result in a 15% increase over the course of the MYP?
I don't have the percent number in front of me of what that would be, but if you added up the dollar increase in each year and divided it by the total bill at current rates, then that would derive the percentage increase compared to current rates of 2023.
And would that be around 15%?
Again,
Subject to check?
Subject to check. I don't have that number in front of me.
Okay. And so for this, the analysis that you conducted, where you state bills will have grown at a nominal 1.4% rate since 2008, why did you select the year 2008 for the benchmark year of this analysis?
So this is an analysis that the company has been doing for years, and the reason we selected 2008 as the starting point is that is the beginning of the Empower Maryland programs. So this is something we've been tracking over the course of Empower since it began, to really get a sense of what has been happening with customer bills and energy usage since 2008.
And just to clarify, so you're not focusing on the year that Empower began is mainly to just capture how energy efficiency gains from Empower affected customer bills.
Yes, that's why 2008 was chosen. Mm-hmm.
So given the rate increases proposed for the MYP, and these will occur over a 3-year period, why did you only identify customer bill growth over a 15-year period?
Again, that was an analysis that the company had available and has been maintaining year over year since Empower started. So it was an analysis we look to regularly when we file our rate cases to get a sense of what the impact to customers has been over a period of time.
Okay. And were you involved in the company's first MYP?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall what the bill increase resulting from that MYP was?
I do not recall, no.
So if I, as the stated in Commission Order 89678 in paragraph 531 on page 250, the Commission explains that approving BGE's MYP for 2022, the impact was 9.48%. And for 2023, the increase was 2.19%. So cumulatively around 11% for the entire MYP. Subject to check, would you agree with those numbers?
From the Commission Order?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Subject to check.
So when you factor in BGE's proposed MYP and the rates from the first MYP, by 2026, customers will have experienced a bill increase of roughly 26%. And I did the math, and that results to around a 4.3% average increase annually per year from 2021 through 2026. Subject to check, would you agree with those numbers?
Subject to check, yes.
And would you agree that this 4.3% average increase per year is substantially higher than the 1.4% nominal growth rate since 2008 that you discuss in your testimony?
The nominal 1.4% growth rate since 2008 that's in my testimony is including all changes in rates that have occurred since 2008, whereas the percentages that you're citing from commission orders are really only looking at the proposed base distribution rate change that occurred.
Okay, fair enough. And do the bill impacts that you discussed in your direct testimony factor in the effect of the company's proposed reconciliation riders?
They do not.
Do you recall what the impact of those riders would be on residential customer bills?
I believe it changes the percent bill impact by maybe 0.1, 0.2%, if I'm recalling correctly.
So if it changes and that change would be an increase, correct?
Correct.
In
rate year 1, it would be an increase, but the impact on rate year 2 would actually be potentially a decrease because that adjustment rider would be going away under my proposal.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. You've answered those questions. Let's see. So now I'd like to ask a few questions about the fixed customer charge increase. And it's correct that the company is proposing to increase both its gas and electric customer charges for residential customers. Is that correct? And in staff witness Thomas's direct testimony at page 24, he explains that the proposed gas customer charge represents a 9.8% increase over the course of the 3 rate years, and that this is a higher increase than the commission has approved over the past 10 years. Would you agree with that assessment?
That sounds familiar to what staff witness Thomas has said. I would not agree with the assessment. I believe what staff witness Thomas looked at was all commission orders over the past 10-year period, including some orders where a customer charge change was not necessarily requested, was not considered, and he also included some settlement agreements which the commission accepted, but were not necessarily the commission decision.
So please turn to page 12 of your rebuttal testimony. Let me know when you're there.
Okay, I'm there.
So I'm going to be asking about your testimony lines 11 through 14. There you point to the commission's approval of the customer charge increase that the company proposed in case number 9645. That'd be the first MYP. And that the commission's finding that the increase in the customer charge balances cost causation against the principle of gradualism while providing an incentive for customers to conserve and have more control over their bills. Is it your testimony that the proposed customer charge increase in this case would still provide an incentive for customers to conserve and have more control over their bills?
Yes, it is.
In the rate design context, what's the relationship between the fixed charge and the volumetric charge?
So on customers' bills, they have, on a residential customer bill, they have 2 different types of charges. The fixed charge, which is a per bill fee, and then a volumetric rate, which varies based on how much the customer consumes, whether it's gas or electric. So the bill is made up of a variety of charges. Some are fixed and some are volumetric.
And so would I be correct to state that, say, whatever revenue the company does not collect through the fixed charge is otherwise recovered through the volumetric charge at a very high level?
In my rate design proposal, yes.
Okay. And assume that BGE chose not to raise the fixed charge. To recover its revenue requirement, the volumetric rates would have to be higher than what you would present in your testimony. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And conversely, since the company proposes to increase the customer charge, then the volumetric rate is less than what it would otherwise have been if the customer charge had been kept flat.
That is correct, yes.
do you agree that higher volumetric rates give customers more control over their bill and send stronger price signals to conserve energy and invest in efficiency and electrification?
So I think volumetric rates absolutely do give customers incentive to manage their usage in order to control the charges on their bill and give them some control. However, I do believe that under my proposal, it's a modest increase to the customer charge such that the percentage of a customer's total bill that's from volumetric charges as opposed to fixed charges remains the same as it is today, both under my proposal with where the customer charge increases and if you were to not accept my proposal to increase the customer charge. So looking at a customer's total bill, the same percentage of that total bill is from volumetric rates with or without my proposal and compared back to today. So I think the incentive still very much exists even with my proposal.
And you, as you explained in your direct testimony, BGE also has included decoupling mechanisms in this NYP application. Is that correct?
Yes.
And these decoupling mechanisms, and you explain this on page 13 of your direct testimony, lines 19 through 21. I'll wait till you're there.
Okay.
And so these mechanisms, they remove the line between customer usage and the company's distribution revenue. So if I state that another way, BGE's revenue is protected from variations in sales due to customer count changes, seasonality, energy efficiency. Would that characterization be correct?
So the company their revenue does change by changes in customer count. So that is the one piece of your statement that I would not agree with. But yes, the company's revenue does not vary from the authorized revenue requirement for changes in weather or energy efficiency measures or things of that nature.
Okay. And so assume that customers reduce their consumption in response to a higher volumetric rate. This decoupling mechanism assures that a change in billings would not have an appreciable impact on the company's, on the revenue that the company collects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Staff?
Good morning, Ms. Fiery. I told your counsel I had no questions, but based on what you said just at the outset of your testimony, I just have one. You changed the numbering of your exhibit 11 to 12.
In my rebuttal
In your
testimony,
rebuttal.
there were two LKF 11s, so this is correcting that.
And are there any, you didn't give us any textual changes, so
Correct.
this is, we should
Just
consider this
illegal.
merely a typo, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. No more questions.
Any redirect?
No, no redirect, Your Honor. Thank you.
And questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Sussman?
No question.
Commissioner Richard?
Just briefly, you're still proposing, if I understand correctly, to use tax offsets? Is that correct in
Yes.
this case? Okay.
That is correct.
Are you going to continue to use a rider?
So as I've proposed it, we have set it up as a separate rider,
Okay.
and it would print separately on customer bills as I think BGE federal tax credit is the line item on the bill.
Okay, so that'll continue.
That would
as it-
continue under this proposal, yes.
Okay, I think that was the only issue. I guess the only other, as policies are changing with regards to, let me just start so you know the context. With regards to the customer charge, in the past we had pretty much a full, I guess, at least for me, it was important that we not offset any of or dilute our efforts on energy efficiency. As we're looking now more toward electrification, is there a difference then, I guess, in policy that we should consider as we look to the future with customer charges?
So I think that's a very good question, and I think as we move towards electrification, rate design policy is going to have to evolve and change, and we are still figuring out what that means. Both on the electric side and the gas side, there's a lot of work to be done and research to be done to figure out what the best setup is from a rate design perspective. Just for customer charges, I think I don't see a significant change to the way we're looking at customer charges as a result of electrification, particularly on the electric side. We still want to make sure we're supporting state policy objectives in terms of solar adoption and conserving, but also recognizing that with electrification, there's going to be more usage as well. So I think there's going to be a balance, and there's definitely more to come in the rate design space.
No, and I appreciate that, and I'm trying to evolve my thinking too to try to figure out where we find that right balance. So I would just say as we look down the road into the future, that might be something worth kind of exploring, and maybe a little more discussion and testimony in the next rounds of rate cases, just so I can get a company perspective. And I'd also like to hear from other parties as well, where we should be going with customer charges and rate design as we look to an electrification policy. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Barbe,
No questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
okay, no, I think we're good, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Okay, I'll start with you.
Yes. Company calls Mr. Singh to the stand, who's been sworn in. Mr. Singh, could you state your name and your position for the record, please?
Stephen Andrew Singh, and my position is Vice President of Electric Operations.
And Mr. Singh, do you have before you a document entitled The Direct Testimony of Stephen A. Singh in this case dated February 17th, 2023, consisting of 50 pages and 3 attachments?
Yes.
Chair Hoover, I'd like to mark Mr. Singh's direct testimony as company or BG Exhibit 29 for identification purposes.
So marked.
Mr. Singh, do you also have before you a document entitled Rebuttal Testimony of Stephen A. Singh in this case consisting of 20 pages dated July 31, 2023, and 3 attachments, 1 public, 1 confidential, and 1 confidential critical energy infrastructure information?
Yes.
Chair Hoover, I'd like to mark for identification purposes Mr. Singh's rebuttal along with the public attachment as Company Exhibit 30A.
So marked.
I'd like to mark the confidential attachment as Company Exhibit 30B.
So marked.
And the CEII attachment as Company Exhibit 30C.
So marked.
Now, Mr. Singh, were company exhibits 29 and 30 prepared by you and or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review those documents?
Yes.
And do you have any corrections to any of them?
No.
And now, if I were to ask you the same questions today that were in your direct written testimonies, would your responses be the same?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I respectfully move Company Exhibits 29, 30A, 30B, and 30C into the evidentiary record.
No objections.
Seeing no objections, so admitted.
With that, Mr. Singh is now available for examination.
Alrighty. Walmart. Sierra Club. Amtrak. Montgomery County. Supplier Coalition. Prince George's County. IBEW.
Good morning, Mr. Singh.
Good morning.
My name is Nicholas Enoch. I'm the attorney for Local 410 for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I do have some questions for you this morning. On page 16 of your direct testimony, you have it there?
Yes.
Can you take a look at the first paragraph? You testify that BGE makes every effort to identify risks and carefully evaluates work and budget estimates to ensure reasonableness. However, there are inevitably risks that will cause spending to be different than budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you able to speak specifically with respect to employee counts as to estimates and the company's hitting the targets that they budget?
It depends on what employees specifically you're asking about. Could you be more specific?
Sure, I'll give you an example. If I may approach.
Sure.
Counsel, if you could first give me a copy so I can see it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I need. No, I guess we're good. So, no, we're good. So.
So, Mr. Singh, what I've put before you, we're going to mark as IBW2. This is a data request that my client propounded upon BGE. And actually, if you notice at the bottom, it says that the response was provided pursuant to the Commission's July 19th ruling on the IBEW's motion to compel. Is that accurate?
As far as I know.
Okay. And you are the sponsoring witness for this exhibit, correct?
Yes.
And would it be correct to say that we propounded a number of these sorts of data requests on BGE with respect to a number of different positions?
I'm sorry. I'm an operator. I don't know what propounded means.
Served?
Sure.
Okay. And you responded in your name to a number of them, correct?
Yes.
And I'm just using this one as an example, but it would not be true that a number of the requests that we made had a similar dynamic. And let me explain, and you can confirm. But in each of these years, BGE has a budgeted number of employees in a certain classification, then they have an actual number, correct?
Yes.
And oftentimes, the actual number is below the budgeted number, correct?
In some cases, yes.
Okay. And well, if you recall, I mean, in your own responses, Wasn't it almost uniformly that the actual number was below the budgeted? If you remember.
I'm going to object that the document does speak for itself.
This is one document. There's other data requests.
And I think the point is, if there are other documents, then perhaps Mr. Singh should see those documents, not
Okay.
just be.
Well, I guess I don't want to, imply more than what's here, so.
And I also don't want to clutter the docket.
And I understand that part too, so if you want to,
I'll move on,
okay.
or I'll speak specifically to
Sure.
this document. So, do you even know what a service operator does?
Listen, I've been in this industry for 21 years as an operator, a supervisor, a maintenance manager, a director, an engineer, leading the engineering department, leading the operations department, and yes, I know what a service operator does.
Okay. Why is it, if you know, that BGE for this particular position, year after year after year, has an actual employee count that trails the budgeted number?
So we are working to fill that gap. So we have a lot of things in place right now in order to build up the resources that we need with service operators, with line mechanics, with a lot of our great workforce. And I just want to give credit to the IBW. We have a wonderful relationship with our union in 410, and we are working hand in hand. In fact, we're actually working with the International to develop plans that could right-size our organization. In fact, I have personally met with the International 3 times, along with our president, Woody Jacobs of IBW 410, and we are developing plans to make sure that we can get our resources up to these budgeted levels so that we can deliver on the commitments that we have.
And although I appreciate your response, it wasn't responsive to my question, but tailing on, when you say to get the resources, that's part of the reason we're here today, is to get appropriate rate relief so that the company has the resources to bridge this gap, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when the company puts down, for example, in we'll just take the June 23rd, 2019, and then there's a budgeted number of 96. Is that 96 what the company actually anticipates having, or is that the goal?
So in our charts, actuals mean actuals. That means what we actually have.
But how about budgeted?
Budget would be the budget.
Okay, and so, and to be precise, is budget, you actually anticipate to have, say, 96 service operators, or is that the goal to have 96?
I'm going to object. It was asked and answered.
Well, actually, I want him to clarify
Fair
it,
enough.
so go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, as I already stated, 96 is the actual. So what actual means is we have 96 actual people, physically, human beings, working in these spots, in these positions.
And can you speak to why it is, for example, with the service operators that, at least over this 4-year trend, the company was not able to meet its budgeted number?
Certainly. So we have a progression system for our wonderful women and men who work in the IBW 410, and service operators is not the top of that progression. So a lot of times these service operators want to continue their career, to get better, to improve. So they will actually promote out of the service operator position into another IBEW position 410 called a crew leader. So a lot of times these numbers are not stagnant. In fact, they move as the great women and men of 410 continue to progress through the ranks.
But at least in this instance, not at a rate which keeps up with what the company needs to perform that work.
Was that a question?
Am I not correct?
So as I mentioned, so a lot of time is it at a rate now. So we want to get to the budgeted rates. Our plans are to get to the budgeted rates. We need and want more union workforce working for us so that we can complete this critical work for our customers in the state of Maryland.
Can you explain to me that if, just using the June 2019 number again of the actual of 87 versus the budget of 96, the 9 individual deficit between those two numbers, would BGE have been seeking rate relief?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to object to this line of question. He's talking about numbers from 2019. That's not part of our rate case. Our rate case is for 24 to 26. So unless he's tying this into the rate case that's actually before this commission, Your Honor, I'm going to object. I've allowed a lot of these questions without objection, but I don't see the relevance.
If I may respond,
Sure.
I think it's certainly germane that if year upon year upon year, the company has a budgeted number which exceeds the actual number, I think it's germane to what is the company actually seeking rate relief for. If it's the budgeted number, let's say that take the last year, January of 23, there's a 14 employee deficit just in this one classification. Are ratepayers paying for, did ratepayers pay for 14 ghost employees?
And Mr. Chair, I think that was asked and answered already by the witness, why that happens.
And I don't think that I don't think he answered the impact on rates or on the revenue that's being sought. If the company is seeking, let me rephrase it. Even in the current application, is the company seeking rate relief based on forward-looking budgets? And I see you looking at your counsel, but I see that you're looking for rate relief in the current case moving forward. Is it based on the budgeted numbers or is it based on actual numbers?
Is it not okay to look at my counsel?
Well, actually, so if you have knowledge of that process, then you can answer the question. If somebody else in the company is the better person to respond to that, then you can push that to somebody else.
Yes, sir. Any rate relief questions, I would refer you to witness John Frayne.
So you don't know?
I think he answered who the appropriate person is.
Okay. Oh, may I move for the admission of IBW2 if I forgot to do so?
No objection.
Hearing no objection, so admitted.
Can we take a look at page 35 of your direct testimony? Near the bottom of your testimony, the second to last bullet, you say a tree voucher program for qualifying customers where removed trees can be replaced. Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you explain for me how that process works?
I don't have the particulars of how that process works.
Okay. Can you take a look at page 17 of your rebuttal testimony? Here you, in the second Q&A, we're talking about tools that are being used by BGE's contracted labor. And you say at the end, rather, it is BGE's expectation that contractors source their own tools for the jobs they are contracted to complete. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is your expectation, I'm honing in on that word, is that the reality, though, in all instances? Is it, if Mr. Woodrow, Mr. Jacobs testified that a number of your contractors are using BGE tools, would that be inaccurate?
Objection calls for speculation. Can answer if he knows.
I was just going to say, I would trust Mr. Jacobs.
Well, you're challenging, and which is fine. We're all big boys, but you're challenging his statement here. So if Mr. Jacobs were to testify that in fact BGE is supplying tools to its contractors, you don't really know if Mr. Jacobs is correct or not, correct?
Well, you asked two separate questions, and you conflated the issue. So the question that you just asked me was that could I be sure in all circumstances that this was the case? The question I answered was around what the company's plans are. So you mixed up two separate issues.
Okay, so it's the company's plans, correct? That the contractors use their own tools.
Yes.
That's what you talked about, their
Yes.
expectation.
Correct.
Okay. The reality of the situation, though, you don't know whether the contractors are using BGE tools or not, correct?
In all cases, there is no way for me to know what happens at all times in all cases. And if Mr. Jacobs, who I trust and respect, was to tell me that he has an instance in where that may have happened against our plan, I would believe Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you.
Okay. Department of Defense, not here. MEA, not here. Office of People's Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple questions for this witness. Good morning, Mr. Singh.
Good morning.
So I'd like to first ask a couple of questions about the conduit spending. And you discussed this in your rebuttal testimony around page 16. Pages 15 and 16. So at page 16, lines 18 through 19, you state there that the investments by BGE in the conduit will increase the operational flexibility, reliability, and conveyance capacity in Baltimore City. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you disagree with OPC witness Stevens' conclusion that the conduit agreement is not a cost-effective way to improve reliability, correct?
Yes.
Now at page 15, beginning at line 18, you discuss the difference between the AC secondary network and the Baltimore City conduit network. Is this downtown AC secondary network housed in Baltimore City-owned conduit?
The secondary network. There is some overlap between the secondary network and the conduit system.
So yes or no, is the secondary network, is some of it housed inside the conduit?
Sorry,
I'm going to object to counsel trying to dictate the witness's answers. I respect the fact that counsel may want a yes or no answer, but that may not always be capable. We have the burden, Mr. Chair, to put on our case, and it is inappropriate for counsel to try to direct that response from this witness.
Well, so your witnesses, just like everybody else's witnesses, are perfectly permitted to provide whatever explanatory information they want to provide in response to a yes/no. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it then?
Sure. So you said in your initial response to my question, you said that there was some overlap between the AC secondary network and the Baltimore City conduit network. So the question that I'm asking is the downtown secondary network, or is the cable in that network, is some of it housed in the Baltimore City owned conduit?
Is some of it, yes.
Yes. Not all of it?
I don't know 100% if all of it is.
Okay. And at page 16, line 2, you state that the conduit is comprised of aged terracotta and Orangeburg materials. Is that correct?
Comprised of, meaning portions of it, yes.
So this downtown AC secondary network, maybe not all of it to your knowledge, but at least some of it, may be housed within in conduit comprised of these materials. Is that a fair characterization?
That's fair.
I'd like you to turn to OPC, the company's response to OPC DR 12-58, and this is, you appended this to your rebuttal testimony.
Is there a page number?
I can give you the PDF page number.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind. Or could you give me the DR again?
The DR is 12-58. So it's PDF page, where is it? 31.
31.
And I understand that this DR response.
I'm sorry, one more time. Could you give me the DR number again?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. 12-58.
12-58. For some reason, I'm struggling to locate it. It's PDF 31, page 31.
Yeah, page 31 within the PDF. Yeah.
And it's staff's 12-31.
OP,
No, OPC.
OPC.
Yeah,
OPC.
OPC
58.
58.
I don't know what. My apologies. I don't know. Can I find it? Can we take a look at it?
If I may, I think it's the last attachment to your rebuttal.
Last attachment to my rebuttal.
The last DR to your,
The last DR to my rebuttal?
yeah, last attachment.
Maybe you could just tell me what it says.
Sure. So
I can't find it.
Fairly long.
happy to do so. So and
I'll take your word for it.
yeah, and I understand. So this DR is
Unless council has a copy he can show.
I mean, I have a copy on my computer.
Yeah.
You-
So let's see if we can work through it.
See if we, yeah.
Yeah.
So so to be clear, this DR was sponsored by Mr. Vejos. I'm not going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you if you agree with one of the statements that's made in the DR.
Okay.
So, and this is your response to question, I think it's subpart B. Mr. Vejos, and this is going to be a quote. The company says, BGE's underground electrical network.
One moment. This is a CEII attachment. This is what I entered into evidence as Exhibit 30C.
That's why I can't.
Oh.
That's probably why he
Oh,
can't
okay.
find it. So if we're going to go into this
do you have-
CEII, I would ask that we go into closed session.
Respectfully, this the company's response to this DR is not marked CEII.
No, this exhibit, this is confidential CEII.
But the response to the DR Council is not confidential CEII.
I'm not sure what you're saying. The whole DR is marked as confidential. Actually, I take that back. That particular, I guess it depends on which
This
particular.
is company exhibit SS-4.
Yes.
And this is attached to the public version of his testimony.
So there are aspects of it that.
Yes, I don't plan to ask about any
Fair
of the,
enough.
the
Okay.
confidential CII attachments to that.
All right, give me the question. Give me the question.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this question, subpart B, the company states that BG's underground electrical network in Baltimore City is operating safely and reliably today. Do you agree with that statement?
Say the last piece again one more time. What is operating safely?
BGE's underground electrical network in Baltimore City.
BGE's underground electric network is operating safely. I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. And do you know how the SAIDI and SAFI of the conduit circuits compare to BGE's system-wide SAIDI and SAFI?
I don't have a specific number, but if you'd like, I can give you what I do know about it.
Yeah, just
Yes,
I think
so-
the specific numbers might be confidential.
Okay. Well, thank you. Underground SAFI and SAIDI is usually, if not, in total, better than the SAFI of overhead circuits that are above ground. So I think it is reasonable to assume that the SAFI of an underground circuit would be perform better than the SAFI of an overhead circuit.
Okay. And in OPC witness Stevens' testimony, he states that the cable and conduit is likely some of the most reliable on BGE's system. And because of that, there is a smaller opportunity to improve the electrical service by capital spending on the conduit compared to investments in other areas. Do you disagree with this assessment?
If there's a very it's very narrow. It's very narrow. So do I agree with the statement that investing here just to improve SAFI is, where you're going to get the best bang for your buck? I would agree that it's not. We're not doing it solely for SAFI improvements.
Okay. But is it correct that the reliability improvements that may result from this conduit spending, that's a driver for the company's interest in performing the work?
The reliability performance, yes, that is part of the reason.
And has the company conducted any estimates of the value of these reliability improvements?
I would have to defer to company witness Vahos on that.
Okay. I think that's, I've a few more questions, but on a different subject. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you also sponsored, or you support the company's proposed capital work plan for new business gas connections. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And on page 21 of your direct testimony,
I have that.
table 6.
I hope so. Page 21, you said?
Yeah, that's correct.
Page 21, table 6. Yes, yes.
Okay. And this table states the company's projected spend on this project. And for 2024, it's around 72.7 million. For 2025, it's 74.6 million. And for 2026, it's 75.8 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And on page 22 of your direct testimony, at line 3, you state that a slowdown in gas work is expected given future housing trend predictions. What future housing trend predictions are you referring to here?
Economic conditions, macroeconomic conditions about recessions and spending patterns and things along those lines.
And you also state, this is on lines 3 and 4 again, you state that another driver of this slowdown in gas work is changes to state policy. Is that correct?
Predictions and yes. Yeah.
What changes to state policy are you referring to here?
I know the state is talking about a lot of different changes that can be made. There's lots of conversations that are occurring in this space. So as we consider what those policies could be, trying to determine if there could be an impact on this part of the business.
Do any particular state policies with respect to natural gas come to mind?
None that I could cite directly. I know it's being talked about a lot.
So would you agree that the state climate, the Climate Solutions Now Act and the net zero by 2045 goal? Is that a state policy that may underlie an expected slowdown in gas work?
Potentially, yes.
Now, in the direct testimony of OPC witness Ron Nelson, he recommends eliminating BGE's current policy of providing allowances for gas line extensions to serve new customers. Are you familiar with the company's line extension policy?
Yes.
And I understand, I think Mr. Case responds to Mr. Nelson on that point, so I'm not going to ask you about his testimony. What I'm going to ask about is the extent to which that policy is reflected in the budget for new gas business connections. Now, under this policy, the line extension policy, residential customers that do not require a main line extension, for them, BGE provides a standard allowance of 150 feet of service line extension. So in other words, a customer that is within 150 feet of an existing main, BGE will front the costs associated with connecting that customer to the gas system. And any point beyond 150 feet, the customer has to pay a contribution. Is that correct?
Yeah, sounds correct, yes.
Now, are the costs to the company of these service line extensions reflected in the budget for new gas business?
Yeah, if it's a cost that we would anticipate to spend, we would put it in our budget, correct?
Do you know how much of the capital budget for new business gas connections these allowances account for?
I don't have a breakdown of that specific portion of the gas budget.
Do you have an approximation?
I don't.
No. And if BGE were to no longer provide line extension allowances, what effect would that have on the new gas business connection budget?
Can you repeat your question? If BG did what?
If BGE were to no longer provide line extension allowances, how would that affect the new gas connection budget?
If BG just stopped providing new gas extensions, that's the question?
Yeah, if the line extension policy were eliminated, what effect would that have on new business gas connections?
It would go down.
It would go down. Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Steph.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Singh. My name's Peter Wilson. I represent staff. I have only a few questions for you. They're all limited to the CME, the customers experiencing multiple interruptions, and starting with the testimony on page 1 of your rebuttal. BGE is seeking to increase its spend on that program, on the general CME program, from $11 million to over $18 million for 2024 through 2026. Is that correct? If you look at the
table?
Well, if you look at lines 18 and 19, page 1 of your rebuttal testimony.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. And of this, carved out of this is $3 million for what's designated CME 4-3P. That's customers experiencing multiple interruptions 4 times, 3 years in a row. The P, does that stand for PIM?
No.
What does that stand for?
It's per year. You got it right. It's customers who are experiencing 4 or more interruptions. They call it 3P. 3P. So it's like 2 Pete would be 2, 3 Pete.
Okay.
The P stands for Pete. 3 Pete.
Okay.
But you got it right. You characterized it correctly.
Okay, but that is a PIM too.
It is what we are putting in our MYP as a PIM. That's correct.
Correct.
Yes.
And that is for the 2 years, 2025 and 2026, correct?
It is correct, but 1.5 million in 25, 1.5 million in 26, correct?
Right, for a total of $3 million.
Yes, you were correct. Yes.
Okay, so that PIM addresses that particular population carved out of the CME. So BG is asking for a reward in this PIM to reduce the number of that defined population to 1,500 in both 2025 and both 2024 and 2025, correct? That would be a reduction from whatever it
25 and
currently is?
26. I think because we said we'd spend the money in 25.
Oh, yeah,
26.
excuse
Yeah,
me,
so,
my,
yeah.
my mistake,
Right,
2025
Right,
and 2026.
right, right.
Then, and I believe you cite the number of qualified CME 4-3 peats for 2022 is at 2,275. That's on 5 or 6 if you need to check that number, but
Page 5 and 6.
page 5 and 6.
5 and 6. And you said what number were you citing? That's the number for what?
You say that's the number of in 2022. I believe that's on page 7.
Page 7.
I mean, line 7, page 6
of my rebuttal.
of your rebuttal. You say, additionally, the actual results of the CME 4-3P metric in 2022 were
In 2022. That's right. In 22.
right. Do you know what the currently existing number is for? I didn't see it in your testimony.
Yeah, it's in my direct. Let's see if I can find it. So it's in my direct testimony. Here's my direct. Yeah, so in my direct testimony, page 41, table 23.
Okay.
You have that there?
Uh,
Oh, okay.
I'm
I'm
gonna
sorry. I'm
take
sorry.
your
What was
word-
your okay? What was
I'm
your
going to
question?
take your word for it.
Okay, you got it. Can you ask me your question one more
What's
time?
the existing number of qualified, of the qualified population that would be addressed by this program?
So in the table 23, as in my direct testimony, so the most current year that we have, the population was 1,656 for the 3-year period from 2019 to 2021.
1,656?
Yes.
And this PIM is going, in the 2-year period, 25, 26, will be rewarded if you can reduce that 1,656 to 1,500,
No,
correct?
that's not correct. So I don't. The semi stuff gets a little bit confusing because that 1656 I was talking about, that's the number of customers who experienced in that 3-year period 4 more interruptions for 3 years in a row. Since then, when you're asking now about the PIM, we've had 2022, and in 2022, last year, we had 3 major storms that we had. Spent most of my Christmas in the storm center. Major storms. All of those customers are now in that. So the number that we now have to work down to have this PIM is much greater because while those customers are excluded from metrics like SAFE 2.5 beta and SADI 2.5 beta, when we look at SEMI, we're trying to approximate for the actual customer's experience. Because the customer doesn't care if they're beta or not. They care if their lights were on or off. So the number that we have to work down, since this is an all-in metric, is going to be higher than the numbers that we were citing in 2021.
Okay. Well, let's go to page 6, lines 6 and 7 of your rebuttal.
Page 6.
And in those 2 lines, you tell us the numbers that existed for this
Yes.
for 4 different years.
Mm-hmm.
2,217 for 2019. 2020 would have been 2,380. And then you're right, there was an unusual drop
Yes.
of 1,656. That's the number you just cited me. That would have been for 2021. And then it went back up in 2022 to 2,275.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number I had been looking at. But
So that's the number in 2022, but
Two-
the way
2,275 is in 2022.
yes,
So now you want to be rewarded for getting it down to 1,500, correct?
well, I don't want to be rewarded,
the
but
company.
well, what we're trying to, I
Go
think
ahead.
the answer is yes. Can I expand a little bit?
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, it's my understanding that we want to have a PIM, right? So we've had working collaborative sessions where I think the idea of a performance incentive metric is something that was sought out to benefit everybody. So we've had working groups with staff, we've had working groups with others, and one of the recommendations coming out of these working groups is to focus on SEMI. So back to your question more specifically. So we said, all right, SEMI is probably a good metric to have a PIM because we all believe that every customer counts, every single one, whether they're beta or not, they all count. So let's focus on them. Let's focus on these pockets and come up with a metric that would be challenging for BGE to achieve the payout. So 1,500, when we look at our historical numbers, as you just walked me through, is a number that we've never hit before. So BGE has not achieved 1,500. So when we were trying to set or establish a stretch goal for us, to utilize the functionality of a PIM, we wanted it to be a stretch, something that would not be easy to obtain, and we've never obtained that before.
And that's one of the requirements of the PIM, isn't it?
That's correct.
It'd
Yes.
be-
Yes, sir.
Be difficult to
Yes, sir.
obtain. Now, on the other side of the rewards is the penalties.
Yes.
And the PIMs are set up to be symmetrical. If you meet this goal, you get rewarded. If you don't meet a certain quota, then you suffer a penalty. And the penalty you've suffered, the penalty you've set up, the penalty threshold is 2,350, correct?
Yes.
But that penalty threshold is less than what the actual number was in 2019, 2020, 21, and 2022. So isn't really a risk there that you're not going to hit that penalty threshold is
Well, as
exceeded.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As you mentioned symmetrical, right? So, we're currently right around 2,275, as you mentioned. So, it would be a big challenge from in 2022 to go from 2,275, the number you pointed to on line 7, right?
Correct.
Right? All the way down to 1,500. That represents definitely more than 30% improvement. Versus the penalty that we're recommending of 2375 is much closer. So I would say we're being overly symmetrical on what we would need to achieve to get a payout and being very conservative on the penalty.
Well, you're going to be receiving funds in order to achieve this, correct? 1,500 each of the 2 years?
Hopefully, depends
And the penalty, theoretically, you would have expended those funds, and yet the population would have grown rather than before you hit a penalty, rather than been reduced in any fashion whatsoever.
So with the population growing makes it harder, right? So as I mentioned, in 2022, when you have these big outages, the population growth makes it much more difficult to achieve a lower number, not the inverse. And your other point that we talked about earlier about getting $1.5 million in 2025 and $1.5 million in 2026, that still doesn't come until a few years. We're only in 2023.
Okay, I'll ask you now a question that Commissioner Suchman asked Mr. Dickens on the first day of these hearings, and that's why is a PIM, why do you need to be rewarded, potentially rewarded, to address these particular customers at all? Don't they deserve, and don't you already have a CME program to address these programs? Why is an additional reward necessary?
So we're going to do the very best we can for every customer. We have a semi program already that you mentioned. You said it to me about the the money increasing. I am very focused on semi because, I mean, every one of those customers do count, all of them. So we are trying to use the dollars that we have in the most expeditious way and cost-effective way for our customers as possible. With the funding that I have, I believe my stretch target is we can get close to about 2,000, a little over 2,000, with the funding I have. With the PIM, I want to drive that down further because I want to get all the customers. So will I be doing this anyway? Yes, sir, I will be going after them anyway. I think they're that important to go after all of them. I know the tools to fix it. So if we want to talk about programs, here's where I am. I've been in this industry for 21 years doing this. I know what it takes to fix this. I'm asking for a partnership with the funding to go get them because we could fix it. And why a PIM? This was a mechanism that I think has been a lot of conversation about, that it could be beneficial for everyone. So, it's not like BGE just came up with the concept of a PIM. We've been trying to work collaboratively to use the PIM because I think a lot of folks were interested in a PIM.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's my last question.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
Yes,
Sure.
Chair, I have a couple. Mr. Singh, OPC's counsel asked you about the current reliability of the BGE downtown network. Do you recall that?
Yes.
But what is your understanding of the condition, the structural condition of the actual Baltimore City conduit?
Yes. So the question was about safety, and while reliability is better than aerial construction, the condition of the conduit is in bad shape. When we talked with the city about the work that needed to be done, there were 26 manholes that were tasked as imminent failures, were going to collapse. There were another 100 or so that require significant amounts of improvement. And while the line of questioning around safety, I think, is generally accurate, when one of these fail, it creates a tremendous impact to our customers and our system. So that aged terracotta in Orangeburg is going to fail. It's already started to fail, and it's going to continue to fail at very high rates.
Just following up on that, terracotta and Orangeburg, you mentioned that. You could explain to the commission, well, are those materials that are used in modern conduit construction?
No, not at all. They're they passed their time. So we'll put PVC. A lot of us have PVC in our houses, right? PVC pipes, that really hardened plastic that could withstand something that these older, outmoded technologies just can't handle. So yeah, you would not install Orangeburg or terracotta in today. It's well past its time.
Council also asked you about new gas extensions. Do you recall that question? Council for OPC, that is. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
Okay. Why does BGE provide those new gas extensions?
So I run the new business organization, both gas and electric. Our customers want gas. They want it back. We have builders that I talk to. We talk to our customers. 9 out of 10 of our customers, our Maryland residents, want gas. So why do we do it? Well, we have a tariff to do it. We have to do it. We also believe in customer choice. I certainly don't want BGE to be something that, or be an organization that tells a customer that they can't do something. There was a question earlier about a lesson learned from the regulators that we had. And, the biggest lesson that I learned from that is that we have to listen to our customers more and value their choice. We put the regulators outside and there was chaos. Imagine if we start telling them, no, I'm deciding that you can't have your gas service. I'm going to limit their choice. I don't think, from my perspective, that BGE should be in a position to tell customers in this country that they can't have something.
So, staff council asked you about the PIM for semi. I'm going to ask you, do you recall that, first of all?
Yes.
Okay. And in particular, council asked you about the penalty level that the company is proposing for the semi PIM. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to go to the same page that council asked you to look at, page 6.
Yes.
And I believe your testimony was that the company set the penalties to be actually something that is more easily reached than the rewards under the PIM. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. And in particular, I want you to look at the penalty, the actual semi for result for 2020. What was that number?
2020, that was 2,380.
Yes. And what is the penalty level that we're asking for in this case?
2,350.
So what is your conclusion from that?
That if you just go back to 2020, we would have been in the penalty zone. We would have been above the penalty level. We would have been at 2380 versus the recommended penalty of 2350.
So would it be fair to say we have proposed a penalty for an actual result that we've actually obtained in the past?
In the recent past, yes.
And have we ever obtained any of the levels we're proposing for any of the reward, as it's been called, for any of these PIMs in this NYP?
No, we have not.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Questions to commissioners? Commissioner Schlesman.
Good morning, Mr. Singh.
Good morning.
Thank you for your testimony. I have a couple questions about the vegetation management program in SEMI, which I didn't know how to pronounce, so I'm grateful that kind of just rolls off the tongue. Okay, so the Blue Sky Vegetation Management Program, you need an acronym for that.
Yes.
Right? So you're proposing 10 13.2 kV circuits, and can you give me a sense of what that represents in terms of percentage of the entire system?
Mm-hmm. So we have 1,500 circuits.
Okay.
So we're picking 10.
Okay. So and you're picking 10 of the most vulnerable circuits?
Yes, 10 that we believe. So a couple things about the 10. We're going to pick them in every county we have, and we're going to pick them in different locations because sometimes weather patterns go through some counties versus not the other counties.
Yeah.
And yes, to your point, we're going to pick ones that have been experiencing higher vegetation-related issues.
Okay. And what do you anticipate you're going to see once this program is in place?
Mm-hmm. So we did a similar program. It's not the exact program, but we did one in Bowie. And in Bowie, this was a few years back, and it's in my testimony, we saw more than a 70% improvement in safety.
Okay. And so if you see something similar in this pilot, your expectation is you're going to extend it to the company-wide circuits, maybe not all the 1,500, because I'm assuming there are going to be circuits that don't have vegetation management issues.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is yes. A little bit longer is, listen, I know vegetation is the issue. When we look, you asked, I heard you earlier asking about, causes of our outages. 49.7% of our outages are from vegetation.
Okay. Okay.
And so I know that this is going to have a tremendous benefit. And yes, to the second part of your question, if we see the results that we expect, we'd certainly come back, we'll share with you all the results, and we'll look to increase it, yes.
Okay. Well, then if you heard our questioning before, you're not going to be surprised that I'm going to ask you about the SHARE project, which is the resilience investment model that 1898 witness, let's see, De Stigler spoke about. And that model looks exclusively at overhead hardening and undergrounding, and that's a $108.5 million investment. So are you aware of that model?
I'm aware of it, yes.
Okay, and did you have any engagement with 1898 and their assumptions or data that they sort of put into the model?
Company witness Wright, who's coming up next, she was, and Mr. Case were certainly more involved. I'm involved. I was in the rooms, had the briefings with it around 1898 and what they're talking about.
Okay, and was there any discussion about putting vegetation management into the model?
They have, they're consultants, right? so they have chaos theories, event theory.
Not sure what that means, but
you know what I mean? Okay, all right.
We can all
listen,
assume what that means.
They got a lot of data, right? I got a lot of experience.
Okay.
I'm telling you, vegetation management, and I got the data to prove it too. 49.7% of our interruptions are vegetation related.
Well, and that makes sense to me. And the challenge I have is that we have a $108.5 million ask from your company for actions that only take care of half of the outages based on what you're telling me, and the other half is not in that project.
Well, you asked a question that expands on both. So, for example, you can't easily put them into two buckets. So the money that's in the proposal too, I'm very well aware of the programs that are being done there. When they talk about circuit hardening, they're also talking about issues that will harden the pulse from vegetation. For example, putting stronger wires that could withstand an impact from vegetation. So there are a lot of elements of vegetation, but when you ask specifically about vegetation management, like insiders like me, we're thinking vegetation management. When Mr. De Stigler was talking to you about hardening, he was also talking about vegetation management. He was just talking about it from a different element. When you asked him, because I did listen to that, when you asked him about storms and he said, well, sometimes trees could blow from one side to the other. That's true, and that does happen. But the elements of the ask, in this MYP ask that we're asking about in that program, will also very much impact vegetation management. It just won't be in the vegetation management program.
And actually, I really like your response because this is the concern that I have, is that BGE can have a number of different proposals and projects, but they may actually work better and be more effective and cost efficient when they're brought together, when they're not siloed, but they're integrated. And so, that brings me to SEMI, which I also wanted to talk to you about. And because you're gonna, after I'm finished, I'm gonna sort of make the same point, which is that it's so much better to have a solution that integrates all the elements, where you don't find yourself sort of overbuilding or being overly responsive to one piece of it because you're siloing your analysis.
Can I respond to that part just real
Please.
quick? Because I think I understand that point. So witness Wright, who's coming up next, she's my peer. I had her job when I was at a different company at PECO. We work 100% together. I know every program she's doing. So while the 1828 study is educating, helping us give us an external perspective to make sure we're on the right track.
1898. So, and that's actually so you brought it back into an earlier period.
Okay.
Shows you how out of date it is. But we're not.
My apologies. But we bring them into to give us a forecast, make sure we're on the right track. So they kind of pressure test us. But what ultimately comes out of it is the programs that we're going to do that Laura is going to talk to you about next. And the programs Laura is going to do, her and I are connected at the hip. I know every one of them. They are absolutely going to complement the specific questions you're having about vegetation management. It is not an overbuild, and it is not based on, some pie in the sky, issues that may be derived from a future forward analysis. There's real work that needs to be done.
Okay. So Semi, can you give me a sense of why these particular customers are experiencing more outages than others? Do you have a sense of what other than storms, or maybe there are just some customers that are more vulnerable to storms than others?
There are, and if you would allow me, I'd just expand on it a little bit.
Please.
Like I said, I've been doing this a while. I remember after Hurricane Sandy, I was meeting with customers in a town hall session, and I had my engineering team in 2012. I had my engineering team go into this neighborhood and talk about reliability, and they gave me a graph about SAFE and how SAFE was improving on their circuit. So I went in there and I showed them the graph and said, "Look, SAFE's improving. What are you mad about?" And I'll never forget, we gave them cookies. So I always call this guy the cookie spitter. As he continued to spit cookies at me, he said, your circuit feeder may be better, but my experience is awful. So I turned around to my engineering team. I said, is he right? So we looked at it, and what we found was these pockets of customers that are left behind. These pockets of customers that if you only focus on SAFE, if you only focus on system averages, you miss them. So why? Your question was why, all the way back to that. A lot of times the reason why is they're on the end of the lateral, on the end of the circuit, or they're in a place where there is a lot of vegetation. And the cost to address that vegetation, whether it's through the Blue Sky Vegetation Management Program that we need an acronym for, or if it's through strategic undergrounding like we talked about earlier, costs a lot more money. So,
or a non-wires job. I mean, that's again going back to this integrated approach where it can't just be. I mean, it may be that last customer at the end of a circuit just if you put solar panels with some battery storage may be the most economic solution from the customer's perspective and from the company's perspective.
I would love to talk to you about that. I think there are so many innovative ways that we could, right now, what we can do versus what we can't do. And I think I would love to continue to engage in a conversation about that. I think you're 100% right. I think there's a lot of non-wires alternative solutions that we can think about. Some very innovative things where you can't do strategic undergrounding or cut down all the trees. Because listen, we care about trees too. I do. I care about the environment. I want trees.
Well, you guys want to do some tree planting, so
yeah,
we're going to have
we do. But I agree with your point. There's a lot of dialogue we can continue to have about backup generation. Potentially, we could even use, and I know we talked in the gas about potentially stranded assets. I can see a future when we use those gas mains to deliver backup generation to a battery that's feeding a customer's house when their power goes out. There are so many things we could do if we can continue to talk.
Right, but it has to be integrated.
Yes.
And it has to be forward thinking. And because it is the responsibility of the utility, it's really hard for me to see. I mean, I guess you're going to have to work a little bit harder for me to see why you should be rewarded to do the very thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Well, we are doing it, Commissioner Suchman. So with the money that we have, listen, I wish I had all the money in the world in order to do the best for our customers. I have a certain pocket of money that's been allowed to us. With that pocket of money, we talked about we're at 2,275 customers right now. I'm clawing tooth and nail to get that down as low as I can. With the money we have, we're going to drop that down to 2,000, and I'm happy about that. In order to achieve even more, because I want that to be zero, for the semi that we're asking for the 1.5 million in 25 and 1.5 million in 23, I want to take that down to 1,500. That's a 25% improvement. So I agree with your point that we should be doing it, and in fact we are. and we're doing as best we can with the existing funding we have. We know it works. We're requesting additional funding to do even more.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Any
No
questions?
questions, Mr. Chairman, no questions.
Commissioner Richard.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. Sounds like we're stepping on another one of your holidays after.
Yeah, Christmas was tough.
Yeah, and now we're on the eve of Labor Day. But thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony this morning. Just a couple of things. I just let's see. You're the operations, the VP operations. So, I mean, how engaged are you in just the overall, I guess, planning and well, I should say the policy setting of the company? I mean.
So we all work together.
Okay.
Laura, who you'll be talking to next, she does system planning. So she's integrating all of the aspects of the grid. We're always talking with our policy folks. My responsibility in this current moment is running the operation. So I run all of electric operations, our control centers, our storm room, as well as the new business pieces we talked about. So I'm certainly aware of it, but I would say that under my scope of responsibility is not directly shaping policy.
Okay, and so when we're talking about some of the conduit issues, you're not here necessarily to talk about prudency reviews or recovery of any capital expenditure programs or when that might occur. That's not really. Is that what you're here for?
You're correct, sir.
Okay.
So I'm the operator guy. Witness Vahos, CFO Vahos will get into all of that. What they do is I make sure that it operates as efficiently as possible. So I'm executing it.
Okay, that's how I understood your position to be. So I just wanted to make sure if I could have a question, if I was asking the right person the question. Just so I understand the Baltimore conduit system, I think I've heard numbers like about 80%. You're maybe the consumer of 80% of its needs.
About three quarters, yeah, 75%.
Three-quarters.
Yeah, right around there, yes.
Okay, and in the work that you're proposing to do for the city, is this very specific to just the electric system, or is it really more broadly focused to just the integrity of the conduit itself?
It's more broadly. So we have monthly meetings with the city, with the other, tenants of the conduit system, to talk about, the different, issues, if there are areas. And we're trying to work to have a collaborative approach to addressing, if there are concerns.
Okay, and these other tenants, are they also stepping up? Are they offering any resources to try to again shore up the integrity of this system?
I'll defer to a Witness Vahos on that.
Okay, but at this point, BGE, this is an important asset to your operations.
And to our customers, yes, sir.
To the operations. Okay. That's really, I just wanted to understand. All right. So about 3/4 to 80%.
Yes.
As far as the PIM process, again, I'm just trying to understand as you were looking at, ways to improve the reliability of your system. And first, I have to say I applaud BGE and our utilities, because they really have stepped up over this last decade, and I think Maryland can be held up around the nation as having utilities that provide second to none service to customers. So again, kudos to you as the operations manager.
And if I could just say for one second, I do also, as I mentioned earlier, want to give kudos to IBW. Those women and men who are doing that work for us, like I was in a storm center on Christmas, they're up in the sky freezing, getting power back on. And I mean that seriously. So thank you. I'll pass that along to the entire team.
Yeah, great. But I just want to get into now, as we're looking at policies such as performance. I can't say PBRs, but PIMS. You called it a collaborative process in developing that, because we do have part of getting to where we are in this state with reliability is you know, we have these work groups and there's a lot of stakeholder involvement. Did any of these PIMS idea, did that go through a work group or, but help me understand the collaborative process that
Yeah.
led to this PIM?
Yeah, there was a working group so I wasn't at the working group, but there was a working group that I know, it might be in my testimony somewhere, where we met with staff, and we met with I think it was a couple years back, 2022, if memory serves, talking about, okay, you know, this mechanism of a PIM. We all think it makes sense. What would be the right one to do it on? And there was a recommendation coming out of that working group that SEMI should be the one that we should focus on.
Okay. And that was the reliability working group for this. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yes.
And was that discussed at all? I can't recall in our recent annual.
9353.
Yeah, pardon me. Yeah.
The 9350 or the 9253 case, the reliability.
Yeah, the really big
I
proceedings. I was
I'm
just
not sure exactly. It might be. I don't
okay.
know
I just you know I try to figure out how we kind of keep these things moving in an
Somebody on my
organized
team
process.
may know it, but I
Okay,
apologize.
yeah, I'd
I
be
don't know
interested to
directly.
of how this was created. So, okay, I just wanted to a little bit about that. And also as we're looking at just some of the capital expenditures, the capital program expenditure recommendations in this policy. We have a number of studies that the company has done that I believe were inputs into your capital program.
Yes.
I was interested in your point about customer choice, and that being very important to you.
Yes, sir.
And then you use this. You said that there's 9 out of 10. Obviously that may start to conflict as we're trying to figure out. Okay, this is where state policy is going, and these are the requirements that we're getting from Annapolis, and how that is going to feed into your decisions at the company and what capital programs you're going to engage in, and the demands you feel from your customer choice and this 9 out of 10 number. Maybe you can tell me how you got to the 9 out of 10, and then again how you're balancing where you're going with your capital expenditure recommendations in this MYP, and again your concerns about customer choice.
I would love to. So 9 out of 10 customers, when they have the availability to gas, want gas, and we have studies that we've seen them from. Also, 70%, we recently heard from an independent group, are opposed to bans, Maryland customers opposed to bans on future natural gas. So you have 90% who want it, 70% who are opposed. So I personally, and as a representative of BGE, do not want to be in a position where I'm telling this monolith of a corporation telling a customer you can't have something. Now, you asked a broader question, and I talk about this all the time with my teams. And I'm a chemical engineer by trade. I started in the utility industry 21 years ago, and I thought I'd only be here 2 years and then move on. But I've grown to love this industry because it's fascinating. So when I talk to my teams right now, I talk to them about our position. Because here we are, when you talked to Denise Galambos yesterday, you listen to our customers, and our customers overwhelmingly tell us two things. Overwhelmingly. One, they want reliability. And two, they want affordability. Nowhere on that list is reduction of natural gas. On the other hand, we have state policymakers and the government that we completely embrace too, talking about a path to clean. We're talking about a path to clean, and we want to lead the energy transformation. So here I am as an operator after 21 years, trying to do the best I can to serve my customers who are asking me for reliability and affordability, but at the same time understanding that we have to do our responsibility for the environment, for the climate, for the state, for our country. And we need to transform the energy industry. So I think we have to have, my viewpoint is we're right in the middle of that. We're the public utility. We have to serve both. And it's difficult to say, let's shut down your natural gas. And you know what? You now have to pay $20,000 extra if you have heating and cooking. Our customers don't have $20,000 extra to get rid of their furnace and their cooking to convert to natural gas because I decided that they can't have natural gas anymore. But at the same time, I certainly understand completely the environmental impact. and want to be part of that solution. So we have a lot of ideas in this regard where we firmly believe natural gas is part of the present and will be part of the future. The delivery system may change. You know, that we talked about stranded cost, but I don't believe that it's ever going to be stranded cost. We're going to have maybe a new delivery, the same delivery system delivering something different. I've stayed here because it's fascinating. I've stayed here because I love the fact that we're in the middle of this very important debate for our children. And I want us to continue to talk to each other. Sometimes I feel like it's like, you know, natural gas bad, you know, this good. There's a middle ground that could be had here. There's a middle ground where we can serve our customers, we can value their affordability, value their choice, and at the same time value the environment and do what's the best for the state and for our country.
No, and I feel in your passion and and admire, you know, the commitment you have to the system. But if we're looking at specific mandates from Annapolis, and if those are conflicting with, again, what the company wants to do, and what, you know, if they're how they're weighing the various inputs, what do you do?
So that's why.
What are you doing?
Well, hopefully I'm talking to you all.
Yeah.
Because like really, like I mean that. I don't mean that to be flippant. Like you have a seat at the table. I have a seat at the table. Before it becomes a mandate, I want us to have a conversation about what makes sense for our state, what makes sense for our customers. And I don't personally believe blanket mandates are required. Now, you asked if a blanket mandate is, then we will have to comply.
Okay, and
we will have to comply.
Again, understanding we are regulators and we don't set those policies. We are, you know, so you have to understand our role is to supervise and regulate our utilities. And so, you know, I think it's important as we are hearing testimony, an understanding of what that role is, and you know why it's important we hear how you're moving forward and how you're considering state policy and state mandates. So anyway, that was less of a question, just
well, I thank you
just
for asking.
Something I think about.
'Cause I'm very passionate about this too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can
Thank you
tell.
for the question.
Yeah, and I appreciate very much the good work you're doing for the company.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Barbie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get to my one question, Bonnie did a good job of covering the waterfront there. I just want to note that natural gas, methane, is 40 times more intense a greenhouse gas than CO2. And that is the context within which public debate is formed in Annapolis. So anyway, that's just a statement. My question is, one of the things I learned in business school is if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And we have heard testimony in other cases that had to do with the reporting of why an outage occurred. And, you know, in many instances, I think it was a very high percentage, the line operator checked other. And so it caused us, and it's not just BGE, it's all of the utilities, in terms of electric outage. And so I'd like you to explain to me what your company is going to do to train your workforce to make sure that the identification of what the cause was is properly noted in the document so that we can make regulatory policy to fit that.
Yes, sir. And I did mention that I am a chemical engineer. So I just want to note for the record that when you use natural gas, which is methane, it's combusted down to CO2.
Yeah, I know, but there's a lot of leakage in the system, and we don't need to debate that.
But CO2 is the byproduct of the end use of our product. Regarding training our employees, the issue is not that our employees need to be trained. Our employees are doing a fantastic job. They are not the issue here. What happens, as the gentleman from IBW asked me, and I do know what a service operator does, is a service operator will show up to a job and see an electric outage and will find no apparent cause because he or she was not there when, say, for example, a tree branch struck the wire and bounced off. So they have we tell them that you're only to report if you have and you can see and identify the specific cause. If a tree comes down and knocks down the power line, certainly they could say reasonably that a tree is the cause or vegetation is the cause of this power interruption. But if a branch hit and bounced off and caused the interruption, they come up, they observe it, they don't see an issue. So they have to put other, because we don't want them to guess, because another issue could have been an animal intrusion, or the animal is no longer there. It could be a number of other things. So the issue isn't that our employees are not doing their job. They are. We have to figure out different ways that maybe we could identify the specific cause. In my expert judgment, I will tell you, I believe, and I've looked at a lot of those others are most likely occurring from vegetation. Because when you plot the amount of others over the vegetation density, you'll find a tremendous correlation that a lot of the others are happening in our most densely vegetated areas. So where I could suppose it's vegetation, and that's what I believe, I can't instruct that worker to put something that they haven't seen.
Well, I really didn't want to go there, but among the utilities, I think BGE had the greatest percentage of other. So there is, I understand. You can't, a line worker is busy and he or she is not going to be able to readily identify what the cause is, but it seems that in the instance of BGE, the other category is used much more frequently than with the other utilities. So I think there might be a teeny bit of training there, because I know that your workers are diligent and hardworking, and I don't want to impugn, I don't want to criticize them for that, but there is a difference in the reporting between BGE and the other utilities around the state, and I hope you can look into that to see what that, but.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So regarding the Baltimore City conduit, there's been an increasing problem with flooding in certain parts of the city in almost any significant rain event. Now, does that water inundate the conduit?
Yeah, certainly it could. Yeah, any water that gets down, especially like in the wintertime where you start having salt that's on the roads and then there's water, so that could create an environment that is more conducive to further damage.
So is that going to be part of the responsibility of you to fix that going forward? Or?
Yeah, if the conduit collapses or has intrusions or has issues, we're going to use some, I wish you could meet him, Tom Rafferty. He runs this organization. One of the best experts that you've ever seen running underground system is now in charge of running this conduit. The customers of Baltimore will be very proud that this is in our hands.
Okay. And then earlier on, and in response to some of the questions from Commissioner Richard, you were talking about the information provided to customers and things like that. So hypothetically, if I'm a developer and I'm creating a new housing development, moderate size housing development, and so I come to the company, to talk to you about providing service, is the information that I get regarding what service to provide my eventual customers who are going to buy the houses that I'm going to build sort of fuel neutral, for want of a better word, regarding whether it's gas service, if the gas service is already there. So whether it's gas service or electric service, or is there a discussion by the company about the consequences of going either route?
We talked to them about so a lot of these builders are very educated, so they know obviously the cost it's going to take for them, and they ask us those questions. But more importantly, when we talk to the builders, they're most interested in the value that they can get for resale, and they know the value is in natural gas. Most customers want natural gas heating, they want natural gas cooking, so anytime there's an option, 90% of the time there's an option, they want natural gas. And a lot of times they'll ask us if natural gas main is not there, they'll look for different plots where it can be there, because the resale value is that much higher, because the customers want it.
So I guess what you're saying is, from the state policy of trying to move away from natural gas, part of the discussion is going to have to be with the builder community about.
Well, I think the builders are just following, personally speaking, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak. I think the builders are just following customer sentiment. I don't think the issue is going to be with the builders. I think the concern is the only reason why the builders are doing it is because that's what Maryland residents want.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, so since we're at 11 o'clock, and I actually do need to stop at 11, so we'll have to have Ms. Wright wait till next week, because I don't think we can deal with it in a minute. So.
I don't think that's going to happen.
So, but we got through 3 or 4, so I think that actually was pretty good today. So with that, we will be back at 9 o'clock on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I will wait until Tuesday to get an answer from the company.
Well, actually, so regarding that matter, if why don't you consider that a bench request
That's right.
from us to get an answer? At some,
We'll, we'll do that.
Okay,
I think
fair enough. Thank you.
that-